Hello, I have a question for you. Can a person in Alcoholics Anonymous use science as their higher power? Okay? Not a rock, not a doorknob, no sort of adopted higher power like that. Just science. Science rather than the supernatural. And the people who I'm asking this to right now, the people who this question is aimed at, the atheists and agnostics in Alcoholics Anonymous who struggle with the 12 steps. Because some time ago I got quite an interesting letter on my own website, Naltrexone Confidential. Now, Naltrexone Confidential was a website that I ran to promote the Sinclair Method. And this lady wrote to me, and she was quite distressed because she was a member of AA, but it wasn't working for her. And she loved the fellowship, she loved the companionship that she got from her home group, but it was just certain aspects of the program that she could not reconcile herself with because she was an atheist. And she'd read about the Sinclair Method, which is medical treatment. It's whereby a person is given opioid blocking medication in order to block the reinforcement from endorphins, so that through a process of Pavlovian extinction they unlearn the addiction. So that's what the Sinclair Method is, and it's got a success rate of nearly 80%. It really is the best thing out there, and it cured me. But anyway, this lady was asking the question, and I thought it was like absolute heresy. This notion of someone in AA using TSM, using the Sinclair Method. It just didn't jive with me. But then, just as I was about to write a really smug letter to this lady, say a smug but polite letter saying no, a secular treatment like the Sinclair Method just does not go with Alcoholics Anonymous, I stopped in my tracks because I then remembered about Bill W. Okay, and his fascination with niacin. Now, here's an interesting little history lesson because it's something that a lot of people in AA don't even know. But throughout much of his life, he was actually quite interested in science, and he was interested in finding a medical treatment for what he saw to be the mental, physical, the physical aspect of the mental, physical, spiritual triad of alcoholism, because that's how he saw it. He saw it as a triad. And something which he was quite interested in was niacin, otherwise known as the B3 therapy. And he actually put in quite a lot of time and resources into studying this, and he was quite keen on it. And he'd spoken to doctors, he'd consulted with doctors, and not just that. I mean, quite famously, the famous physician, the winner of the Lasker Award, Vincent Dole, he'd asked him whether he could create a methadone for alcoholism. So the guy was quite interested in pharmacology. This whole notion that Alcoholics Anonymous has now, which is we don't do pills, that's far and away from their original founder, because he was quite a different man. He was quite interested in pharmacology. And what's quite telling about Bill W is, of course, he sadly never lost his own craving. He died pleading for whiskey on his deathbed. So, it's quite a sad story, but that's how he ended his life. So he never got rid of his own craving. So, I think his search was as much to sort of treat himself, to look for something for himself. Because I think the man did struggle quite a bit. And the thing about Bill Wilson was that, there's been quite a lot that's been written about him, depending upon where you look. He's Jack the Ripper. But he was no saint, all right. But the thing about Bill Wilson was he wasn't a stupid man. He was, I think, quite misguided on a number of things. I think he meant quite well on a lot of things. But I think there's some aspects of the program where he actually made a rod for his own back right at the beginning. Because he made a fellowship that essentially was unrevisable. So what happened was, years later, when he was looking at all of this niacin stuff, and he went to see Interchurch or whoever, saying, look, I've got this really interesting idea. I'd like to give this out to all the alcoholics. I'd like to give them niacin. Of course, the answer was a flat no. No, because, they'd become quite comfortable by then, and quite comfortable in their own ideas, and they were quite averse to anything new, and this is quite something, because this is them going against their own divine prophet. Remember, this is the man who spoke to God, and yet they're saying to him now, they're saying, well, no, we're not doing this. This is wrong. We don't do medication in AA. And you think, well, hold on. So if he was wrong with that, what was he wrong with before? But anyway, that's another question. But it all makes for very interesting reading. These three pamphlets, they were produced, I believe it was in 1965, 1968, and there was one that came out posthumously in 1971, which I believe was just after Bill died of lung cancer. And on my website, I do actually have a letter from his widow, Lois, to three doctors, and it's quite a touching letter. She's actually writing to them, and she's saying, well, one of Bill's last dying wishes was that you would investigate niacin. That you would look at this, because he still had this urge to help the still suffering alcoholic, and it was his dearest wish. As I say, it is actually quite touching. So anyway, that letter's actually on my website. So what I can do is I can put a link underneath the YouTube video, so anyone watching this can head to my website and have a read of that, because like I say, it really is quite good. So, getting back to the subject, we've been talking about niacin, but what about the Sinclair method? Well, as I say, what this shows is that, Bill wasn't anti-medication. he certainly wasn't anti-medication, and he was interested in research, more than people give him credit for, perhaps. And what is my intuition? My intuition is that if he was alive today, and if someone had showed him the Sinclair Method and the 120 or so studies that there are, and just how wonderful this is, I think that he would have abandoned niacin, and I think he would have really got quite enthusiastic about the possibilities of the Sinclair Method and naltrexone. I do. That's my intuition. Because, as I say, he, as much as anything, he was a man trying to find answers, and I think, yeah, he had those accomplishments of setting up the fellowship and being the main architect of the big book. But it was just this one thing, the physical component, that he wanted to nail down. And that was the missing piece of the jigsaw with him. And in any case, that's my intuition. But getting back to the original question, which is just about whether you could use something like the Sinclair Method along with Alcoholics Anonymous, much the way as Bill Wilson originally wanted to use niacin as an adjunct to his own program, then there is actually a case to be made there. Because when you look at AA, the only desire for membership is a desire to stay sober. And it's splitting hairs with regards to how you get there, whether it's through abstinence or whether it's through gradual pharmacological extinction. But if you can genuinely say, look, I'm on the Sinclair Method, and it's a method of gradual reduction, and I want to become sober, then you have the right to be a member. You have that right. You are a member because you have a desire to be sober. Okay? So there's that. And yeah, I mean, the main sticking point is abstinence, you find. There seems to be this my way or the highway attitude towards abstinence, and something like the Sinclair Method just seems to be completely counterintuitive to that, because of course with the medication you take it an hour before you do drink, and you take it all throughout the course of your drinking, and you drink your way sober. So it's quite counterintuitive, and you would get quite a bit of resistance from some intransigent old timers, no doubt. But put it this way, when it comes to looking for a higher power, what's better than science? You know? What really? I mean, a rock, doorknob. How the hell are you supposed to pray to those? How are you supposed to ask those to take away your defects of character? How do you ask a doorknob to take away your defects of character? All right. Now, if you seriously do that, you've got more problems than being an AA member. So the logic kind of breaks down really, because the way that the 12 steps are written is it's pretty much explicit that it relies upon a supernatural force, and that's what the founders of AA were in fact referring to. I mean, this dodge about um, your own chosen higher power, God of your understanding. It really is a dodge, and it's a real it's a real cognitive headache for atheists and agnostics. Cognitive dissonance, even headache. That's the words which I was trying to get to. Cognitive dissonance, trying to hold two conflicting ideas at the same time that don't compute. So there is a case that you could, because they do already exist, agnostic AA groups and atheist AA groups. So if you wanted to start a revolution, you could set up your own secular science-based AA meeting using the Sinclair method, and you could adapt the steps. And that's something which I also discussed in this original article which I wrote, how you would begin to actually adapt the steps to be able to work a 12-step program to fit around the Sinclair method, around a scientific treatment. And there is actually a way. I did come up with something, and that is on the website. So that's all I really just wanted to talk about, just about the fact that it's not necessarily so binary. It's not necessarily so either or. It could be the case that with a little bit of imagination you could have the best of both worlds. You could still attend the meetings that you're going to, but you could plead your case for saying, well, I have every right to be here because I have a desire to be sober. Or, just to get rid of the hassle, you could set up your own meeting, and your own group for people on the Sinclair method. So that's just a thought anyway. And I think that's about it for now. As I say, what I shall do is I shall put a link up for the original article which I wrote, so that anyone visiting this YouTube page can have a look at that link. And I look forward to people's thoughts on this. Okay, thanks for listening.